one and all, my name is John Clare, this is John's Dark Art, and as always, you are very welcome. Today's piece that I'm going to talk about is a piece called Monkey Chatter. It's a bit of an old one, this. I actually did this, not on this iPad Pro, which in itself is about 5 years old. I finished this on my first ever iPad Pro, which was the 9.7 inch 2016. Something which once I bought this, I actually gave away to a young artist who I believe is still making good use of it, which is awesome. This was like one of my first forays into drawing digitally. And I think it might be useful to look at to see some of the things I might have got right and some of the things I might have got wrong. So I'm going to, through the wonders of editing, I'm going to show it up here for you now. Got that? Yeah? Good. And next up, we're going to go into how I made the piece, some of the things that might have tripped me up along the way, and we're going to do that now. Okay, so here we are. We're in Procreate. This is Monkey Chatter, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into Canvas information. For some reason, I still haven't signed. It's a bad habit of mine. I don't sign my work. But as you can see here, like 30th of August, the date modified, that's the day we're actually recording. But the date it was created was the 21st of October 2017. So this is a very, relatively speaking anyway, it's a fairly old piece of mine in terms of working digitally. So if I go into the statistics, at the time it took me 22 hours and 25 minutes and total strokes made were 20,196. So yeah, another one of my more involved pieces. But as you can probably tell by looking at it, not my most refined, if I'm being honest. So what we're going to do, we're going to go into time-lapse replay. And okay, one thing you may notice straight away, we're going to kind of jump in quite far for the moment, because you may notice this is a self-portrait. You may also notice that the face looks very distorted. The reason for that, and I'm going to try and bring that up here, is that the original photo was taken by a friend of mine outside a bar called Monty's in Brick Lane in East London. And it was a fisheye lens, and basically me being me, if I see a camera, I'm either going to gurn at it or stick my middle finger up here. It's a bit of a bad habit of mine. But it was a really cool photo of me. And at the time, rather than wearing farmer's caps, I'd tend to wear more like skull caps. But I liked the distortion. I liked how kind of unhinged I looked. And I wanted to try and capture that in the drawing. So that's why like everything seems so exaggerated. And if you're wondering what that kind of spot is there, that's because I've got a birthmark on my nose. One thing that strikes me anyway is that my drawing style at the time seems to be a lot looser. I would say I'm a lot more refined now. But even then, like when I was using pencil and paper, I tended to be a lot more patient, a lot more refined with it. I think the scruffiness of the drawing, I think, is more of a sign of my uncertainty with the actual medium of working digitally. Because again, at the time, this is still relatively new to me. Even my shading's a lot more kind of rough around the edges. It's a lot more kind of aggressive, almost. So anyway, I've more or less got that where I wanted it, so I started drawing monkeys. And again, the idea for this piece was born out of hearing a phrase called monkey chatter. And what that basically means is, if I remember correctly, it's basically when you just can't pass out the noise. Everything just sounds like a troop of monkeys like roaring and shouting at each other almost. In a lot of ways, this piece was the progenitor of where a lot of my work is at the moment, where I tended to refine it over the last few years. So as you can tell from this, another thing I didn't really understand at the time as well is the fact that I was resizing quite a lot. And again, this is more born out of uncertainty more than anything else. And I think the idea was for me to kind of be closer to this monkey so I could hear him like roaring in my ear roll for whatever reason. And this monkey here is actually from a very famous photograph, and I wanted to include it because a wildlife photographer went out into the jungles of South America, and he was taking photographs of these monkeys, and this monkey actually came along, grabbed the camera, took a selfie with himself, and Peter, whatever they're bloody called, actually took the photographer to court to give the monkey the copyright of the photograph that he took, which Sounds utterly ridiculous, but then again, this is Peter we're talking about. I just thought it'd be kind of cool to kind of have that monkey in there. So, and also what I wanted to do is I wanted to give him a little bit more purpose within the drawing. So I put his hand on my shoulder and I gave him a phone to look at and a set of headphones, because why not? You know, and just in case Peter tried and sue me, look, our artistic license, so I changed that up, I changed the context. Don't be coming after me now, do I? Actually, what we'll do is we'll hop out of the time-lapse replay and just look at the piece in general. Now, my shading style there is a lot more crude, it's a lot more aggressive, it's a lot looser. Whereas if you look at later portraits I've done, which we'll do now, if I go into one of the previous pieces we looked at, which was Odin and Flat Cat, I did that piece probably about a year or two later, if I remember rightly. You can tell here my shading's a lot more refined, it's a lot more controlled, it's a lot more precise. I mean, yes, there's a lot of cross hatching, of course there is, because I shade via cross hatching, but the actual hatching itself is a lot more purposeful. Whereas with Monkey Chatter, which is here, well, actually no, this is not the original, this was cleaned up later. Well, actually no, that might be a useful point to come in with later on, but what we're going to do is we're just going to head back to what we were looking at originally, which isn't that one, which is that one. Thank you very much. Right, so you can see here there's like, I've left a lot of like structural lines, shading lines. Also, you can see that there's a lot, you know, the blurriness of the monkey. The reason for it is because of all the constant resizing that I was doing with the monkey. So what ended up happening is the quality of the drawing would degrade with time, but then I would still kind of draw over the top of it anyway. So it creates almost an inconsistency. Well, it doesn't almost create inconsistency, it does create an inconsistency. So you have blurriness here, then you have kind of like more sharper shading here. But again, it's all, while directional, it's still a lot more aggressive, a lot looser, a lot more unrefined. But then strangely with this one, it's almost like, again, lots of structural lines on the outside, a lot more kind of unfinished almost. It's like almost like I could have done with coming in and cleaning it up, which I believe I did do. If we go back to finished works and we come down and look at that version of Monkey Chatter, which is here. Open up please, thank you very much. So I did come around later on and I did kind of clean it up. But at the same time, the lack of focus on the monkey towards my left as I'm looking at it, there's still issues with the drawing. It does look inconsistent. The three drawings do, while occupying the same space, they all look very different in terms of how they were executed. And I think that this kind of shows me that I've made progress, and that while this isn't bad, it's not, to me anyway, it's not good either. You know, it shows me that I've made a lot of progress. I mean, like I said, Odin, this was just a year late. I think a year and a bit later, if we actually have a look. If we go into canvas information, this was done 15th November 2018. So yeah, a year later, this piece was started. So already, like, there's a lot more improvement and refinement in my work. And I think since then, I've kind of carried that through, where this is my most recent piece, which may feature in a future video. You know, there is a lot more kind of refinement in my shading, and I think, you know, that only happens when you progress with time. You know, even Wendigo here, you know, while there is a lot of cross hatching and directional cross hatching, I do think this is a more refined version of what I was doing prior to that. I thought it'd be useful to look at this piece because this is kind of the inception of my current art style and the current work that I produce. It was the progenitor of that, if you like. And I think that it shows me, like I said, it shows me how much progress I've made, how much better I've got. Even at my age, I still feel that I can improve. And if this piece shows anything, that no matter where you are in your career, how old you are as an artist, whether you're 20, 30, 40, 100, doesn't matter. You can always improve. And yeah, I thought that'd be useful. So anyway, let's round this out now, shall we? Okay, so that was Monkey Chow. I've got to be honest with you, I don't think this piece is really good enough to put up on sale on the website, www.johnsdarkart.com. I think it is up there in the gallery, but I'm not going to put this up for sale, mainly because I don't think it's good enough. But there are other pieces that I did think were good enough, and they are up for sale on the website. So if you'd like to go over there, pick yourself up a print, again, www.johnsdarkart.com, and help support us and what we're doing here, we very much appreciate. Thank you very much. The one thing that this piece shows me more than anything, like I said in the walkthrough, is that this piece shows me that I've made progress. It's not a situation where I feel this piece is rubbish. I don't think it's rubbish, but I don't think it's polished enough. I don't think it's up to a standard where I feel my work is now. And that's no bad thing, because like I said, this is like it's useful for me to look back on it and say, yeah, I've kind of come a long way since then. I think it's always a good idea, wherever you are in your artistic career, to kind of examine the progress you've made and how much better you are, because you can always improve. Doesn't matter what you're doing in life. I think it's important to kind of like bear that in mind. I mean, like, for instance, I do the editing for a lot of these videos. I'm still new to it, so I'm pretty sure people can pick holes in my editing style. I don't think I have an editing style at the moment. I still feel like I'm finding my way with it, but I enjoy the process, so I enjoy learning and I enjoy improving. And I think that's with anything that I try and turn my hand to, whether it be photography, art, editing, anything for that matter. As long as I've got a passion for it, as long as I want to keep doing it, I'm going to keep doing it. So, and with art especially, because art is my first love. It's the first thing that I learned how to do. I've been drawing since a little kid, and I don't ever envisage myself not drawing, not creating art. At some point, I do envisage, fingers and toes crossed, knock on wood, all that business, that there will be a studio that we will be shooting this from and that we will be working from, myself and my colleague Roman Puch. But yeah, I am optimistic about the future. I am optimistic about where I am with my artwork. I'm optimistic that, as long as I continue to improve, as long as we continue to improve, that the future is bright. And with everything we're doing through YouTube, we're building that up very slowly. I know we don't exactly have a huge follow account, a huge view account, but not looking for sympathy. I'm just saying that this is where we are now. We will look back on this period in time where we were starting out. It'll be useful to inform us of the progress that we've made. It's like with any venture that you get involved with, like the Twitch streaming thing that I've got involved with recently. I mean, that in itself is like getting used to that kind of aspect of being a Twitch streamer. Oh yeah, I forgot to plug it, didn't I? Yeah, Twitch at JohnStarkart. So if you'd like to join us over there, I stream most weekends. Generally speaking, I think what I'm trying to say here is, I think some people look back and they kind of almost like hide their eyes. It's almost that they look back with embarrassment at where they were when they started off. And I'm guilty of that as well in the past. I've definitely taken that attitude where I've looked back on previous work and been embarrassed by it, or rolled my eyes and thought it wasn't good enough or whatever. But you've got to bear in mind, that's where you were at that time. And I think it's good to kind of look back, rather than looking back with negativity or looking back with embarrassment. Maybe look back with pride. That's where you were at that time. That was as good as you were at that time, and now you've improved and now you've got better. I think a lot of people also think that improvement is only for the young. You don't improve. You can stagnate when you get older. Well, yeah, you can do that if you choose to do that. If your choice is that you want to improve, if your choice is that you always want to get better, if your choice is that you always want to learn, then you will always be working towards a better version of you. Let's just say, like, the older I've got, rather than becoming more pessimistic and more kind of dogmatic, I've actually become a lot more open. I've actually become a lot more open-minded about a lot of things. Young John Clare was an absolute fucking tit. Sorry to swear, but I was an absolute tit. I held some really awful opinions as a youngster, and it's only as I've got older I've kind of like realised, people are people. Everyone has their flaws. No one's perfect. But for the most part, we're all, we are all trying to get better. We're all trying to improve. And I think, we should be doing our best as a society to encourage that, rather than demonizing people for some stupid tweets that they've done when they were younger, or some ridiculous video or opinion they may have held when they were younger. That rather than judging them as they are now, judging them as they were. And I don't think that's right. I mean, we're all guilty of it in one way, shape or form, but I think it's something that we need to be, as a society and as people, need to be aware of, and something as people and a society we need to kind of try and come away from that. Accept people for who they are, accept that, we're all works in progress, much like my art. It's a work in progress, and the only time it's going to stop improving is when I'm dead. And I think that should be the attitude we take with every aspect of our life. As long as you want to improve and as long as you want to get better, then that's what you should be striving to do, and what you should be striving to achieve. And hopefully that will inspire you to keep making your work, to keep improving, and keep sharing it with the world in whatever way you see fit. Anyway, my name's John Clough. This is John's Dark Art, and as always, you are very welcome. Till next time.